Lisa Martinez stared at her screen in the quiet communication center of Station Kepler 7. The night shift was usually boring, just routine check-ins from cargo ships and mining operations. She sipped her coffee and watched the endless stream of data flowing across her monitors. Then something changed. A new signal appeared on her emergency frequency scanner. The pattern was strange, not like anything she had seen before. The transmission was weak, but clearly artificial. Lisa leaned forward and adjusted her equipment to get a clearer reading. The signal grew stronger as she fine-tuned the receivers. The message was in Galactic Standard Language, the common tongue used by most alien species for trade and diplomacy. Lisa had studied it during her training, but rarely used it. Most human. Colonies preferred to keep to themselves these days. She activated the translation program and waited as the computer worked to decode the transmission. The words that appeared on her screen made her heart race. It was a distress call from something called the Zephyrian Confederation. They were under attack by an enemy called the Vorthon Empire. The message spoke of destroyed worlds and millions of civilians in danger. The Zephyrians were begging for help from any civilized species with military capabilities. Lisa immediately contacted her supervisor, but he was off duty. The next person in the chain of command was Captain Jake Sullivan aboard the UCS Leviathan, the flagship of the Human Colonial Defense Fleet. She had never spoken directly to a fleet captain before, but this seemed important enough to break protocol. The communication link crackled to life, and Captain Sullivan's face appeared on her screen. He was a middle-aged man with gray hair and tired eyes. Lisa could see the bridge of his ship behind him, with crew members working at their stations. Captain Sullivan, this is Communications Specialist Martinez at Station Kepler 7. I have received what appears to be an alien distress call on emergency frequencies. The message claims entire star systems are under attack. Sullivan's expression changed from mild annoyance to intense focus. Send me everything you have, Martinez. I want the raw data and your analysis. Lisa transferred the files and waited while Sullivan reviewed them. She could see him reading the translation, his face growing more serious with each line. After several minutes, he looked back at her. Good work, Martinez. This is definitely legitimate. I'm calling an emergency council meeting with the other ship captains. Keep monitoring that frequency and let me know if you receive any updates. The communication ended, leaving Lisa alone with her thoughts. She had heard stories about what happened when humans got involved in galactic conflicts. Most alien species considered humans to be dangerous and unpredictable. They called humans deathworlders because Earth was such a hostile planet that it had produced warriors unlike anything else in the galaxy. Aboard the Leviathan, Captain Sullivan contacted the other ships in his fleet. Captain Amy Rodriguez of the UCS Ironclad was the first to respond. She was younger than Sullivan, but had earned her command through exceptional skill in combat situations. Her ship specialized in heavy assault operations. Jake, please tell me you're not thinking what I think you're thinking, Rodriguez said when she saw the distress call data. We can't just ignore this, Amy. These Zephyrians are asking for help, and we're the only military force in range. Captain Chris Bennett of the UCS Stormbreaker joined the conversation next. His ship was designed for fast strikes and reconnaissance missions. Bennett was known for his aggressive tactics and quick decision-making. The last time we got involved in alien politics, 3 species filed formal complaints with the Galactic Council, Bennett pointed out. They said our methods were too brutal. The final member of their council was Captain Nicole Turner of the UCS Predator, whose ship handled stealth operations and intelligence gathering. Turner was the most cautious of the group, always considering the long-term consequences of their actions. We need to think about this carefully, Turner said. If we respond to this call, we'll be announcing our presence to the entire galaxy. Most species still remember the incidents from 20 years ago. Sullivan understood their concerns. Humans had been isolated from galactic society for good reasons. Their approach to warfare was considered savage by most alien standards. Where other species used precise, limited engagements, humans fought with an intensity that frightened their enemies and allies alike. But as Sullivan read the Zephyrian message again, he thought about the millions of innocent beings who were dying while they debated. The distress call described orbital bombardments of civilian centers and the complete destruction of 3 star systems. The Vorthons were not just conquering territory, they were committing genocide. "Look at these casualty reports," Sullivan said, sharing his screen with the other captains. "The Vorthons have killed over 2 billion Zephyrians in the past month. This isn't a political conflict or a territorial dispute. This is extinction." The 4 captains spent the next hour reviewing everything they knew about the Zephyrian Confederation and the Vorthon Empire. The Zephyrians were a peaceful alliance of 7 different species who focused on trade and scientific research. They had no significant military forces and relied on treaties with stronger neighbors for protection. The Vorthans were a warrior empire that had been expanding aggressively for decades. They believed that only the strongest species deserved to survive and showed no mercy to those they conquered. Their military was large and well-equipped, but they had never faced humans in battle. Finally, Sullivan made his decision. "We're going to help them. I know the risks, but I won't stand by while innocent people are slaughtered. We'll prove that humans can be a force for good in this galaxy." Rodriguez nodded first, followed by Bennett and Turner. Whatever happened next, the human colonial defense fleet was going to war. The human colonial defense fleet began moving towards Zephyrian space within hours of receiving the distress call. 4 massive warships accelerated away from their patrol routes, their engines burning bright against the darkness of space. Captain Sullivan had ordered radio silence, but it was too late to keep their movement secret. Galactic communication networks carried news faster than any ship could travel. Within days, every major species in the galaxy knew that the human deathworlders were heading toward an active war zone. The reaction was immediate and widespread panic. On the trading station orbiting Centauri Prime, Ambassador Veltar of the Andalusian Republic called an emergency session of the Neutral Species Council. Representatives from 12 different civilizations gathered in the station's main conference room. The discussion was heated and fearful. "The humans haven't been seen in organized military action for 23 years, Veltar announced to the assembled delegates. The last time they intervened in a conflict, they turned a simple border dispute into a 3-month nightmare that ended with the complete surrender of both sides." Ambassador Crean of the Hegemony nodded gravely. "My people still tell stories about the Battle of Zerion. The humans didn't just defeat the pirate fleets there, they hunted down every single pirate ship in the system, including the ones that tried to surrender." The room fell silent as they remembered the reports from that engagement. Human Marines had boarded disabled pirate vessels and continued fighting in hand-to-hand combat even when outnumbered 10-1. The pirates had eventually begged for mercy. But the humans didn't stop until every criminal in the system was captured or dead. Meanwhile, in Zephyrian space, elder diplomat Kethara was facing a different kind of crisis. Her people had sent the distress call in desperation, never expecting anyone to respond. Now she was receiving reports that the legendary human deathworlders were coming to help them. Kethara stood in the central command center of the Zephyrian capital ship, watching holographic displays that showed the advancing Vorthon fleet. Her species was tall and graceful, with delicate features and pale blue skin. Like most Zephyrians, she had evolved on a low-gravity world with a rich atmosphere. Their bones were hollow like birds, and their movements were fluid and careful. "Elder Kethara," her aide whispered nervously, "should we send another message? Perhaps we should tell the humans that their assistance is no longer needed." Kethara considered this option. The stories about humans were terrifying. They came from a world so dangerous that it had produced beings capable of surviving anything. Their planet had extreme weather, deadly predators, and natural disasters that would kill most other species. This harsh environment had created warriors who fought with a fury that other civilizations couldn't understand. But as she watched another Zephyrian colony ship explode under Vorthon weapons fire, Cathara made her choice. No, we need help, no matter how frightening our rescuers might be. Aboard the UCS Leviathan, Lieutenant Commander Ryan Clark was briefing the crew about their destination. Clark was Sullivan's second-in-command, a careful man who specialized in alien cultures and first contact protocols. He stood before a room full of Marines and naval officers, all eager to hear about their new mission. The Zephyrians are a fragile species by our standards, Clark explained, showing images of Zephyrian anatomy on the main display. Their bones are hollow and lightweight. A normal human handshake could break their fingers. Their respiratory system is adapted to high oxygen environments, so our ship's standard atmosphere might make them dizzy or sick. Sergeant Kelly Adams raised her hand. She was a veteran Marine who had served on dozens of missions. Sir, what about their military capabilities? Are we working with local forces? Clark shook his head. The Zephyrians have almost no military tradition. Their ships are designed for exploration and trade, not combat. They've been trying to evacuate civilians while fighting a delaying action against the Vorthons, but they're badly outgunned. The crew absorbed this information quietly. Most of them had never worked alongside alien allies before. Humans had been isolated from galactic society for so long that few people remembered what cooperation with other species looked like. In Vorthon space, General Vextor was reviewing intelligence reports about the approaching human fleet. He commanded the invasion force from the bridge of his flagship, a massive dreadnought bristling with weapons. Vextor was a typical Vorthon warrior, standing over 7 feet tall with thick armor-like skin and 4 powerful arms. General, his intelligence officer reported, our analysis of human military records is complete. They appear to use primitive tactics based on close-range combat and boarding actions. Vextor examined the data with growing confidence. The human ships were smaller than his own vessels and carried fewer long-range weapons, their preferred. Strategy seemed to involve getting as close as possible to enemy ships and fighting at point-blank range. These Deathworlders fight like animals, Vextor declared to his staff. They have no sense of proper military doctrine. We will destroy them from a distance before they can close to their preferred range. But as the general continued reading the reports, some details began to concern him. Human ships had unusually thick armor and powerful engines. Their crew survival rates in desperate situations were impossibly high. Most disturbing of all, humans seemed to fight harder when they were losing, not weaker. Captain Sullivan gathered his command staff in the Leviathan's war room to plan their approach. The holographic display showed the current positions of all known forces in the region. Red markers indicated Vorthon ships, while blue represented the remaining Zephyrian fleet. The Vorthans have numerical superiority, Sullivan observed, studying the tactical situation. They're using standard siege tactics, surrounding the Zephyrian home system and cutting off escape routes. Captain Rodriguez joined the meeting via communication link from the Ironclad. Jake, we're still 3 days out from the first engagement. Range. The Zephyrians might not last that long. Sullivan nodded grimly. The latest reports showed Vorthon forces closing in on the Zephyrian homeworld. Millions of civilians were trapped on the planet's surface while enemy ships destroyed the orbital defense platforms one by one. We'll have to hit them fast and hard, Sullivan decided. No time for careful planning or measured responses. We go in at maximum speed and start shooting anything with Vorthon markings. Lieutenant Commander Clark looked uncomfortable with this plan. Sir, that approach might confirm every negative story the galaxy tells about human military tactics. Sullivan turned to face his second-in-command. Ryan, right now I don't care what the galaxy thinks about us. The Zephyrians are dying while we worry about our reputation. We're going to save as many of them as we can, and we'll deal with the political consequences later. The human fleet continued its journey toward Zephyrian space, carrying with it the hopes of a desperate people and the fears of an entire galaxy. The human colonial defense fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Zephyrian space. Captain Sullivan stood on the bridge of the Leviathan, watching the tactical displays update with new contact information. What he saw made his blood run cold. 3 Zephyrian worlds showed no life signs. Their orbital stations were dark, floating debris marking where cities had once existed. The remaining Zephyrian fleet was in full retreat toward their homeworld, with Vorthan ships pursuing them like predators chasing wounded prey. "Communications, get me the Zephyrian fleet commander," Sullivan ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of a damaged Zephyrian ship. The alien commander was clearly injured, with blue fluid seeping from cuts on his pale face. Behind him, crew members worked frantically to repair failing systems. "This is Fleet Commander Silthan of the Zephyrian Defense Force," the alien said, in accented galactic standard. "Are you the human ships that responded to our distress call?" "We are," Sullivan replied. "What's your current situation?" Silthan's expression was grim. "We have lost 60% of our fleet. The Vorthans are using weapons that tear through our shields like paper. Our remaining ships are escorting evacuation transports, but we cannot hold them off much longer." Sullivan studied the tactical display. The Zephyrian ships were elegant, but clearly not designed for combat. Their hulls were thin, their weapons were weak, and their formation showed no military discipline. It was amazing they had survived this long. "We're going to help you," Sullivan said. "Pull your ships back and let us handle the Vorthans." Before Silthan could respond, proximity alarms began sounding on both ships. A Vorthan patrol squadron had detected the human fleet and was moving to intercept. 6 heavy cruisers approached in perfect formation, their weapons already charging for battle. "This is Vorthan Battle Group 7, came a harsh voice over the communication system. "Unknown vessels, you are interfering in a legitimate military operation. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Sullivan looked at his tactical officer. "Range to targets?" 50,000 kilometers in closing, sir. All ships prepare for combat. Target the lead Vorthan vessel." The Vorthan commander was still talking. "We have scanned your primitive ships. You are outgunned and outnumbered. This is your final warning." Sullivan activated his ship's weapon systems. "This is Captain Jake Sullivan of the Human Colonial Defense Fleet. You're the ones who are outgunned." The battle began with the Vorthans firing first, sending massive energy beams toward the human ships. The humans responded by doing something the Vorthans had never seen before. Instead of maintaining a safe distance and trading long-range fire, the human ships accelerated directly toward the enemy formation at maximum speed. "Evasive maneuvers," Sullivan ordered. "Close to point-blank range." The Leviathan twisted and rolled through space, dodging enemy fire while charging straight into the teeth of the Vorthan formation. Behind it, the other human ships followed the same aggressive tactics. Captain Rodriguez's ironclad took several direct hits, but kept coming, its thick armor absorbing damage that would have destroyed most ships. The Vorthans were confused by this approach. Their tactics relied on using superior firepower to destroy enemies before they could get close. But the human ships were built differently. They had massive engines, heavy armor, and weapons designed for close-range combat. Captain Bennett's Stormbreaker was the first to reach optimal firing range. "All weapons, fire at will," Bennett ordered. The human ship unleashed a devastating barrage of kinetic projectiles and plasma bolts. At point-blank range, even the Vorthan shields couldn't stop the assault. The enemy cruiser's hull began to buckle and tear under the concentrated fire. "Impossible," the Vorthan commander gasped as his ship's systems failed around him. No civilized species fights like this, but the humans were just getting started. Captain Turner's Predator appeared from behind an asteroid, having used stealth systems to position itself perfectly. Her ship fired a full spread of torpedoes into the Vorthan formation, causing 2 more enemy vessels to explode in brilliant fireballs. The remaining Vorthon ships tried to retreat, but the humans pursued them relentlessly. This was another shock. For the Vorthons, most species would accept an enemy withdrawal and claim victory. Humans kept fighting until their enemies were completely destroyed or utterly defeated. Within 20 minutes, the entire Vorthon patrol squadron was either destroyed or crippled. The humans had taken damage, but all 4 ships remained operational. The Zephyrian fleet watched in amazement as their rescuers finished off the last enemy vessel. "Incredible," Commander Silthon whispered. "I have never seen such aggressive tactics." Sullivan contacted the Zephyrian commander again. "We need to get your civilians to safety. Are there any secure locations in this system?" "There is an orbital station around our 4th moon," Silthon replied. "But it is currently under attack by another Vorthan squadron. Captain Bennett volunteered for the rescue mission. His ship was the fastest in the fleet and best suited for hit-and-run operations. I'll take a team and clear out those Vorthons." The Stormbreaker raced toward the 4th moon while the other human ships continued to escort the Zephyrian evacuation fleet. When Bennett arrived at the orbital station, he found a desperate situation. Vorthon Marines had boarded the facility and were hunting down Zephyrian civilians in the corridors. "Sergeant Adams, prepare your boarding team," Bennett ordered. "We're going in hard and fast." Sergeant Kelly Adams led 20 human Marines into the docking bay of the orbital station. The scene that greeted them was horrific. Zephyrian civilians lay scattered throughout the corridors, their delicate bodies broken by Vorthon weapons. The survivors huddled in maintenance areas and storage rooms, too terrified to move. The Marines advanced through the station with methodical precision. When they encountered Vorthon soldiers, the fighting was brutal and one-sided. The Vorthons were larger and stronger than humans individually, but they had never faced enemies who fought with such intensity. Corporal Danny Martinez kicked down a door to find 3 Vorthan soldiers threatening a group of Zephyrian children. The aliens turned to face him, confident in their superior size and strength. That confidence lasted exactly 3 seconds before Martinez opened fire with his assault rifle. The human Marines fought through the station level by level, driving out the Vorthon invaders and rescuing trapped civilians. The Vorthons had expected to face weak resistance from evacuation ships and civilian security forces. Instead, they found themselves fighting trained killers who showed no fear and gave no quarter. Lieutenant Grace Thompson, the fleet's xenobiologist, accompanied the rescue teams to provide medical aid to injured Zephyrians. She had studied their physiology extensively and knew how to treat their unique medical needs. Her gentle touch and careful manner helped calm the terrified civilians. "It's okay," Thompson whispered to a young Zephyrian who had been separated from her parents. "You're safe now. We're here to help." The little alien looked up at the human with large, frightened eyes. Thompson removed her helmet to show her face, smiling reassuringly. It was the first time most of these Zephyrians had seen a human without military armor. Within 2 hours, the station was secure and the civilians were safe. The Vorthan survivors had either fled or surrendered, shocked by the ferocity of human combat tactics. News of the engagement spread quickly through both fleets. Commander Silthan contacted Captain Sullivan with gratitude and confusion. "Your warriors fight like nothing we have ever seen. The Vorthans are calling you void demons and demons of death." Sullivan nodded grimly. "We get that a lot. The galaxy doesn't understand our methods, but they work." As the human fleet regrouped and prepared for the next engagement, word of their arrival began spreading throughout Vorthon space. For the first time since their invasion began, the Vorthon forces were experiencing something they had never felt before: fear. General Vextor stood in the command center of his flagship, studying reports from the engagement with the human fleet. His confidence was shaken for the first time in decades of warfare. The patrol squadron he had sent to deal with the humans had been completely destroyed in less than 30 minutes. "These tactics make no sense," Vextor growled to his staff officers. They charged directly into weapons fire instead of maintaining safe distances. Their ships should have been destroyed immediately. His intelligence officer, Commander Jektal, pulled up detailed scans of the human vessels. General, their ships are built differently from anything we have encountered. The armor is 3 times thicker than standard military specifications. Their engines produce far more power than should be possible for vessels of that size. Vextor examined the data more carefully. The human ships seemed designed for exactly the kind of close-range combat they had demonstrated. Where most civilized species built elegant vessels optimized for long-range engagements. Humans had created flying fortresses meant to absorb punishment and deliver devastating firepower at point-blank range. They fight like savages, Vextor declared. But savages can be defeated with proper tactics. Deploy the entire invasion fleet. We will surround them in the asteroid belt around the Zephyrian homeworld and use the rocky terrain to limit their mobility. The Vorthan general was making a critical error. He assumed that limiting human mobility would give his forces an advantage. He did not understand that humans had evolved to use any environment as a weapon. Captain Sullivan received reports of the massive Vorthan fleet movement from Captain Turner's reconnaissance missions. The enemy was committing over 200 ships to the battle, including their largest dreadnoughts and battlecruisers. It was an overwhelming force by any conventional standard. They're trying to trap us in the asteroid field, Sullivan observed, studying the tactical projections. They think the rocks will slow us down and force us to fight on their terms. Lieutenant Commander Clark looked concerned. Sir, they outnumber us 50-1. Even with our tactical advantages, those odds might be impossible to overcome. Sullivan smiled grimly. Ryan, you're thinking like a civilized person. The Vorthons made the mistake of choosing to fight us in an asteroid field. They just gave us thousands of weapons to use against them. The human fleet split into 4 groups, each ship operating independently in the dense asteroid field. This was another surprise for the Vorthons, who expected enemy fleets to maintain tight formations for mutual support. Human ships were designed to operate alone when necessary, with each vessel capable of independent action. Captain Rodriguez took the ironclad deep into the asteroid field, using the massive rocks for cover while she planned her attack. Her ship's sensors detected a Vorthon supply convoy moving through a narrow passage between 2 large asteroids. Weapons officer, target those asteroids, Rodriguez ordered. I want to bring them down right on top of that convoy. The ironclad fired its main guns at the massive rocks, carefully calculated shots that destabilized their rotation. The asteroids began tumbling toward each other, grinding the Vorthan ships between them like nuts in a crusher. The convoy was destroyed without the human ship ever being detected. Captain Bennett used different tactics with the Stormbreaker. His ship was fast and maneuverable enough to dart between asteroids at high speed, appearing suddenly to attack. Isolated Vorthan vessels before disappearing again into the rocky maze. This is like hunting in a forest, Bennett reported to the fleet. The Vorthans can't use their numbers effectively when they can't see us coming. But it was Captain Turner who delivered the most devastating blow. She had hidden the Predator inside a hollowed-out asteroid, using the rock's mass to mask her ship's energy signature. When a formation of Vorthon heavy cruisers passed nearby, they had no idea they were flying into a trap. The Predator emerged from the asteroid like a predator, striking from ambush. At point-blank range, her weapons tore through the enemy formation before they could react. 3 Vorthon ships were destroyed in the first salvo, and the survivors were too damaged to fight effectively. General Vextor watched his carefully planned battle falling apart. His ships were being picked off one by an enemy that refused to fight according to conventional rules. The humans used the asteroid field like a 3-dimensional battlefield, turning every rock into potential cover or a weapon. All ships converge on the human flagship, Vextor ordered desperately. If we can destroy their command vessel, the others will be easier to defeat. But even this plan backfired. When the Vorthon fleet concentrated its forces, it made them vulnerable to the kind of mass assault that humans specialized in. Captain Sullivan led all 4 human ships in a coordinated attack on the enemy formation. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships rammed through Vorthan formations, their thick armor allowing them to survive impacts that would destroy other vessels. They fought at ranges so close that enemy ships couldn't bring their main weapons to bear without hitting their own allies. Lieutenant Commander Clark found himself in command of a boarding party that had taken control of a Vorthon cruiser. The ship's original crew had abandoned their posts rather than face human Marines in close combat. Clark was trying to secure the vessel when he received a desperate communication from Captain Sullivan. "Ryan, we need someone to take out the Vorthon. Command ship. It's too heavily defended for a normal attack." Clark looked around at the damaged cruiser he had captured. The ship's reactor was unstable and its life support systems were failing. Most of his boarding party was wounded from the fighting to take control of the vessel. "Sir, I have an idea, but you're not going to like it." Clark's plan was simple and suicidal. He would use the captured Vorthan cruiser as a guided missile, ramming it directly into the enemy flagship. The reactor explosion would cripple or destroy the command vessel, but everyone aboard the cruiser would die in the process. "Ryan, there has to be another way," Sullivan protested. "Sir, this is the only way to break their command structure. My ship is already doomed, and so are most of my crew. At least this way our deaths will mean something." Clark sealed the communication and turned to address his remaining Marines. "Listen up, people. We're going to ram the enemy flagship and detonate our reactor. Anyone who wants to evacuate to the escape pods has 30 seconds to leave." None of the Marines moved. Sergeant Adams spoke for all of them. "Sir, we came this far together. We'll finish it together." The captured Vorthon cruiser accelerated toward the enemy flagship, its engines straining against the damage the ship had sustained. Vorthon defenders fired everything they had at the approaching vessel, but Clark's crew kept the ship on course through sheer determination. Vorthon Marines boarded the cruiser in a desperate attempt to stop the ramming attack. What followed was a running battle through the ship's corridors, as human Marines fought to protect their comrades who were piloting the vessel toward its target. Clark reached the reactor control room just as Vorthan soldiers breached the final defensive position. "For the Zephyrians," he whispered, and activated the reactor overload sequence. The explosion lit up the asteroid field like a small star. The Vorthon flagship was torn apart by the blast, taking General Vexitor and his entire command staff with it. The remaining enemy ships, leaderless and demoralized, began withdrawing from the battle. Captain Sullivan watched the explosion with mixed feelings. They had won a crucial victory, but the cost had been terrible. Ryan Clark and 37 Marines had sacrificed their lives to save the Zephyrian people. The human fleet had lost a third of its personnel, and the surviving ships were badly damaged. But they had proven something important to both their enemies and their allies. When humans made a promise to protect innocent people, they would keep that promise no matter what it cost them. Commander Silthan's voice came over the communication system, filled with awe and gratitude. "Captain Sullivan, the Vorthon fleet is retreating from our system. You have saved our people, but at such a terrible price." Sullivan looked out at the debris field that marked the site of the battle. Human courage and sacrifice had turned the tide, but he wondered if the galaxy would ever understand the price his people were willing to pay for doing what was right. The retreat of the Vorthon fleet marked the end of the invasion, but it was only the beginning of something much larger. News of the human victory spread through galactic communication networks faster than the surviving enemy ships could flee. Within days, every major civilization knew that the legendary Deathworlders had not only intervened in an alien conflict, but had won against impossible odds. General Vexitor's replacement, Admiral Krev Shan, met with what remained of the Vorthon invasion force at a staging area 3 systems away from Zephyrian space. The surviving ships showed clear signs of battle damage, and the crews were demoralized by their defeat. "The humans are demons," one ship captain reported. "They fight without fear of death. They use tactics that no civilized species would consider." "Admiral," Krevshan studied the battle reports with growing alarm. The humans had turned a simple asteroid field into a complex battlefield, using the environment itself as a weapon. Their willingness to sacrifice themselves for tactical advantage was unlike anything in Vorthon military doctrine. "We declare Zephyrian space to be cursed by the void demons," Krevshan announced to his fleet. "Any ship that enters that region does so at its own risk. The Vorthon Empire will find easier targets elsewhere." It was an unprecedented decision. For the first time in their history, the Vortons had declared an entire star system off-limits due to fear of its defenders. On the Zephyrian homeworld of Ethros, elder diplomat Cathara was dealing with a very different kind of crisis. The Adech human fleet was requesting permission to enter orbit around their planet, and her people were terrified. The same warriors who had saved them were now asking to visit their world. Cathara stood in the planetary council chamber addressing the assembled representatives of all 7 Zephyrian species. The chamber was elegant and peaceful, with flowing curves and soft lighting that reflected their gentle nature. "The humans have saved our civilization," Cathara reminded the council. "We owe them our lives and our freedom." "But they are deathworlders," protested Councillor Yethron of the Northern Territories. "The stories say they come from a world so dangerous that it created monsters. What if they decide to conquer us themselves?" Cathara had wrestled with the same fears, but she had also seen something else in the human communications. When Captain Sullivan spoke about his fallen comrades, she heard genuine grief in his voice. When Lieutenant Thompson tended to injured Zephyrian civilians, her actions showed true compassion. "I have studied their behavior during the battle," Cathara said to the council. "The humans could have easily taken control of our space after defeating the Vorthons. Instead, they are asking permission to visit. That is not the behavior of conquerors." The council voted to allow the human fleet to enter their system, but with strict protocols. The human ships would remain in orbit while small diplomatic shuttles brought representatives to the planet's surface. Medical teams would be standing by in case the humans accidentally injured anyone with their superior strength. Captain Sullivan prepared carefully for the first face-to-face meeting between humans and Zephyrians. He chose Lieutenant Grace Thompson to lead the diplomatic team because of her expertise in alien biology and her gentle manner with the rescued civilians. Thompson studied everything known about Zephyrian culture and physiology. Their bones were hollow and fragile, their skin was sensitive to pressure, and their emotional responses were more intense than human norms. A human handshake could break their fingers, and loud noises could cause them physical pain. "Remember, we're dealing with a species that has never experienced warfare," Thompson briefed her team before the shuttle departed. "Everything about us probably seems frightening to them, from our size to our strength to our aggressive reputation." The diplomatic shuttle landed at the Zephyrian capital city, a beautiful settlement of graceful spires and flowing architecture. Thompson and her team emerged wearing their dress uniforms with all weapons left aboard their ship. Even so, the Zephyrian honor guard that met them was visibly nervous. Elder diplomat Cathara was waiting in the landing area, surrounded by her advisors and medical staff. She was taller than Thompson had expected, nearly 7 feet in height, but so slender that she looked fragile as crystal. Her pale blue skin had an almost translucent quality, and her large eyes reflected an intelligence that was both ancient and curious. "Welcome to Ethros, Lieutenant Thompson," Cathara said in careful galactic standard. "We are honored by your presence." Thompson approached slowly, keeping her movements gentle and non-threatening. She had practiced the proper Zephyrian greeting, a slight bow with hands held at shoulder height. "Elder Diplomat Cathara, we are grateful for your hospitality. My people are honored to have helped in your time of need." The formal ceremony that followed was unlike anything in human diplomatic experience. The Zephyrians had prepared a traditional welcome that involved complex musical harmonies and symbolic gift exchanges. Thompson and her team participated carefully, aware that any mistake could cause injury or offense. But it was after the formal ceremony that the real breakthrough occurred. A young Zephyrian approached Thompson hesitantly, carrying a small, injured creature that looked like a cross between a bird and a butterfly. The child's translator device was working imperfectly, but her meaning was clear. "Please help," the child said in broken Galactic Standard. "Pet is hurt. You fixed people on station." Thompson knelt carefully to examine the injured creature, her movements slow and gentle. She had brought medical supplies designed for Zephyrian physiology, but she had never treated one of their native animals before. Using her knowledge of Earth biology and what she knew about Zephyrian evolution, she carefully cleaned and bandaged the creature's injured wing. The child's joy when her pet began moving normally again was infectious. Soon, other young Zephyrians were approaching the human delegation with questions and requests for help. The adults watched in amazement as their children overcame their fear of the legendary Deathworlders. Elder diplomat Cathara realized that she was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. Here were two species that could not have been more different, yet they were finding common ground through compassion and mutual respect. "Lieutenant Thompson," Cathara said privately, "your people have shown us something we did not expect. Behind the fearsome reputation of the Deathworlders, we see beings who care deeply about protecting the innocent." Thompson smiled, though she was careful to keep her expression gentle. "Elder diplomat, my people have learned that strength without compassion is meaningless. We may fight fiercely when we have to, but we prefer to build and heal when we can." Over the following days, the human delegation worked with Zephyrian scientists and engineers to establish new protocols for cooperation between their species. Thompson's medical knowledge proved invaluable in developing treatments that could help both humans and Zephyrians. Her work led to breakthroughs in regenerative medicine that would benefit species across the galaxy. Captain Sullivan participated in formal negotiations with the Zephyrian Council to establish a mutual defense agreement. The Zephyrians offered to share their advanced sensor technology and peaceful exploration techniques in exchange for human protection against future threats. "We cannot offer you much in terms of military support," Counselor Yethron admitted during one session. "Our people are not warriors by nature. You don't need to be warriors," Sullivan replied. "The galaxy needs builders and healers just as much as it needs defenders. We'll handle the fighting so you can focus on what you do best." The news of the Human-Zephyrian alliance sent shockwaves through galactic society. For the first time in decades, a major alien civilization had formally requested human protection. Other species began to reconsider their assumptions about the Deathworlders. Ambassador Veltar of the Andalusian Republic sent a carefully worded message to Captain Sullivan, expressing interest in opening diplomatic relations with humanity. Several other species followed suit, curious about these beings who had fought so fiercely to protect strangers. But perhaps the most significant change was in how humans saw themselves. For 23 years, they had been isolated and feared by the galaxy. Now they had proof that their strength could be used for something greater than mere survival. Lieutenant Commander Clark's sacrifice had become a legend among both humans and Zephyrians. The Zephyrians built a memorial to him and his crew on their homeworld, honoring the humans who had died to save their people. Captain Sullivan stood before that memorial during the dedication ceremony, surrounded by both human and Zephyrian dignitaries. The inscription was written in both languages, but its message was universal. They gave their lives so others might live. As Sullivan looked out at the mixed crowd of humans and aliens, he realized that something fundamental had changed. The legendary Deathworlders were no longer just a source of fear in the galaxy. They had become something more important, guardians who would stand between the innocent and the darkness, no matter what the cost. The ceremony ended with a Zephyrian musical tribute that brought tears to human eyes and hope to alien hearts. In the distance, communication arrays were already receiving new distress calls from other threatened civilizations, and Sullivan knew that his people would answer them. All. 6 months after the Battle of Ethros, the galaxy was a very different place. The human colonial defense fleet had established a permanent base in Zephyrian space, and Captain Sullivan found himself dealing with problems he had never expected. Instead of preparing for war, he was managing diplomatic missions and cultural exchange programs. The change began with simple requests. A mining colony in the Outer Rim had been threatened by pirates and asked for human protection. A trade convoy needed escorts through a dangerous sector where raiders had been attacking civilian ships. Each successful mission led to more requests, and soon human ships were patrolling trade routes across 3 different star systems. Lieutenant Grace Thompson had been promoted to commander and given a new title, Human Ambassador to Alien Species. Her office on Station Ethros 7 was busy from morning until night with representatives from different civilizations who wanted to establish formal relations with humanity. Commander Thompson, her aide, Lieutenant Bobby Harrison, announced as he entered her office. "The hegemony delegation has arrived for their appointment." Thompson looked up from her desk, which was covered with diplomatic protocols and cultural briefings. The hegemony was a confederation of 4 species that controlled major shipping lanes in the galactic core. Their request for a meeting had surprised everyone, since they had previously been among humanity's harshest critics. The hegemony delegation consisted of 3 beings, each representing a different member species. Ambassador Crean, whom Thompson recognized from intelligence reports, was accompanied by 2 officials she had never met before. They seemed nervous but determined as they took their seats in the conference room. "Ambassador Crean," Thompson said, "carefully, thank you for making the journey to meet with us. How can humanity assist the hegemony?" Crean exchanged glances with his companions before answering. "Commander Thompson, we have a situation that requires the kind of direct action that your people specialize in. A group of Vorthan warlords has occupied the Meridian Station, a critical hub for civilian traffic in our territory." Thompson pulled up a holographic display showing the station's location. Meridian Station was indeed crucial for civilian shipping, serving as a rest stop and supply depot for thousands of non-military vessels each day. "The Vorthans are not just occupying the station," Crean continued. "They are forcing passing ships to pay tribute or face destruction. Hundreds of civilian crews are being held hostage." Thompson studied the tactical information carefully. The station was heavily defended and located in a nebula that would limit sensor effectiveness. It was exactly the kind of complex military operation that most species would avoid. "Why hasn't the hegemony fleet dealt with this situation?" Thompson asked. The second delegate, a insectoid being named Coordinator Vlex, made a clicking sound that indicated embarrassment. "Our military doctrine emphasizes minimal casualties and diplomatic solutions. The Vorthans have threatened to kill all hostages if we attempt a rescue." Thompson understood the problem immediately. The hegemony's careful, cautious approach to warfare made them unsuited for hostage rescue operations. They needed someone willing to take extreme risks to save innocent lives. "We would be honored to assist the hegemony with this situation," Thompson said formally. "However, I must warn you that our methods may be more aggressive than you expect." The third delegate, a tall humanoid with golden skin, leaned forward. "Commander, we have studied your battle reports from the Zephyrian campaign. We understand that humans fight differently than other species. We are prepared to accept your methods if they can save those hostages." 2 days later, Captain Bennett Stormbreaker arrived at the edge of the nebula containing Meridian Station. His ship had been specially modified for stealth operations, with enhanced sensor systems and improved engine dampeners. Accompanying him was a team of human Marines led by newly promoted Major Kelly Adams. "Major Adams," Bennett said as they studied the station's defenses, "this is going to be tricky. The Vorthans have positioned their ships to cover all the normal approach routes. Adams examined the tactical display with the eye of an experienced combat veteran. The station was surrounded by 3 Vorthon cruisers, with additional fighters patrolling the outer perimeter. The hostages were being held in the station's central hub, where any weapons fire could kill them. "Sir, I have an idea, but it's going to require split-second timing." Adams's plan was typically human in its directness and apparent insanity. The Stormbreaker would use the nebula's interference to mask its approach, getting close enough to launch boarding pods directly at the station. While the Marines assaulted the central hub to free the hostages, Bennett would engage the Vorthon ships to prevent them from destroying the station. The operation began at Oro 300 station time, when most of the civilian hostages would be resting. The Stormbreaker crept through the nebula like a predator stalking its prey, using the charged particles and electromagnetic fields to hide its energy signature. Major Adams led 20 Marines in 4 boarding pods, small armored capsules designed to punch through station hull plating and deploy troops directly into enemy territory. It was a tactic that no other species would consider, since it required Marines to trust their lives to tiny pods traveling at high speed through space. The boarding pods struck the station simultaneously, penetrating the outer hull and delivering the Marine teams into different sections of the facility. Adams's pod landed in the central hub, where she immediately encountered heavy resistance from Vorthon guards. The battle inside the station was fierce but brief. Human Marines fought with an intensity that overwhelmed the Vorthon defenders, who had expected to face a conventional assault from outside the station. Instead, they found themselves fighting elite troops who had appeared inside their stronghold. "Hostages secured in Section 7, reported Sergeant Tony Miller over the communication system, moving to Section 9. "Section 12 is clear," added Corporal Lisa Wang. "No civilian casualties so far." Meanwhile, Captain Bennett engaged the Vorthon fleet in the kind of close-range combat that had become a human trademark. The Stormbreaker darted between the enemy ships, too close for them to use their heavy weapons without risking damage to the station. The Vorthon commander was faced with an impossible choice. If he fired on the human ship, he might hit the station and kill his own troops. If he didn't fire, the human ship would eventually destroy his fleet. It was exactly the kind of tactical dilemma that human commanders specialized in creating. Within 1 hour, the station was secure, and all hostages were safe. The Vorthon survivors had either fled or surrendered, and their leader was in custody. Major Adams reported 0 civilian casualties and only minor injuries among her Marines. The rescue operation made headlines across the galaxy. For the first time, a major alien government had publicly praised human military methods. Ambassador Kreen appeared in news broadcasts describing the rescue as perfectly executed and exactly what the situation required. But the real impact was felt in the corridors of power throughout galactic civilization. Species that had previously avoided any contact with humans began sending quiet diplomatic inquiries. The Andalusian Republic formally requested a meeting to discuss mutual defense agreements. The Trade Federation asked for human escorts for their most valuable cargo shipments. Captain Sullivan found himself dealing with requests from governments he had never heard of. His small fleet was being stretched thin trying to respond to every crisis, and he knew that humanity needed to make some difficult decisions about their role in galactic affairs. The solution came from an unexpected source. Elder diplomat Keth Ara approached Sullivan with a proposal that would change everything. "Captain Sullivan," she said during a private meeting on Ethros, "the Zephyrian Council has been discussing humanity's situation. We believe it is time to formally propose human membership in the galactic community." Sullivan was stunned. Human membership in the galactic government had been considered impossible for decades. No species had ever been admitted after being formally excluded for aggressive behavior. "Elder diplomat, that's a generous offer, but I'm not sure the other species would accept us." Kethara smiled in the gentle way that her people had perfected. "Captain, you may be surprised. The galaxy has seen what humans can accomplish when they fight for others, instead of fighting for themselves. Many species are beginning to realize that they need protectors who are willing to take risks for the innocent. The proposal would require approval from the Galactic Council, a body representing over 40 different civilizations. It would be a long and difficult process, but for the first time in human history, they had alien allies willing to support their case. Commander Thompson was assigned to lead the diplomatic effort, working with Zephyrian and Hegemony representatives, to build support for human membership. Her first task was to address the concerns of species who still remembered humanity's aggressive past. "We cannot change what humans were," Thompson told a gathering of alien diplomats. "But we can prove what humans have become. We ask for the chance to serve the galaxy as protectors and allies, not conquerors." The Galactic Council chamber on the neutral world of Concordia was filled with tension as representatives from 43 different species gathered to debate humanity's application for membership. Commander Grace Thompson sat in the designated Human Observer section, watching as species after species took the floor to argue for or against her people's inclusion in galactic society. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, designed to accommodate the wildly different physiological needs of dozens of alien species. Atmospheric controls maintained separate environmental zones, while translation systems converted speech into hundreds of different languages simultaneously. Ambassador Veltar of the Andalusian Republic was the first to speak in favor of the human application. His people had been among humanity's earliest critics, but recent events had changed their perspective dramatically. "Honored colleagues," Veltar began, his voice carrying across the chamber through the translation network. "We have watched humanity evolve from a feared and isolated species into valuable allies. The rescue of Meridian Station demonstrates that humans can apply their unique capabilities in service of galactic peace." The response from the opposition was immediate and passionate. Councillor Marix of the Crystalline Hegemony rose to address the chamber, her geometric form shifting colors to indicate emotional intensity. "The Andalusians speak of evolution, but leopards do not change their spots," Marix declared. "Humans remain fundamentally aggressive beings. Their recent actions may appear heroic, but they are simply finding new outlets for their violent nature." Commander Thompson listened to the debate with growing frustration. Many of the species opposing human membership were doing so based on outdated information and cultural prejudices. They spoke of humans as if they were still the same isolated warriors who had frightened the galaxy decades ago. Elder diplomat Kethara took the floor to respond to the criticism. Her presence commanded respect throughout the chamber, as the Zephyrians were known for their wisdom and peaceful nature. "Councillor Marix speaks of unchanging nature," Kethara said calmly, "but she ignores the evidence before us. When my people faced extinction, only humans answered our call for help. They sacrificed their own lives to save beings they had never met. This is not the behavior of mindless aggressors." The debate continued for hours, with representatives sharing their concerns and hopes for humanity's role in galactic affairs. Some species worried about human military capabilities being used to dominate weaker civilizations. Others argued that the galaxy needed protectors who were willing to take decisive action against threats. Ambassador Crean of the Hegemony provided crucial support by sharing detailed records of human rescue operations. His testimony about the Meridian Station incident carried significant weight, as the Hegemony had previously been skeptical of human methods. "The hostage situation at Meridian Station required immediate action," Crean explained to the Council. "Our own forces were unwilling to risk civilian casualties through aggressive tactics. Human Marines accomplished in 1 hour what our military estimated would require days of careful planning. But it was the testimony of an unexpected witness that proved most compelling." Fleet Commander Silthan of the Zephyrian Defense Force had traveled to Concordia specifically to address the Council about his experiences fighting alongside human forces. "I have seen humans in battle," Silthan told the assembled delegates. Yes, they fight with an intensity that frightens their enemies. But I have also seen them weep for fallen comrades and risk their lives to save wounded aliens. The humans who saved my people are not monsters. They are warriors with the hearts of protectors. During a recess in the formal proceedings, Commander Thompson met privately with several key delegates to address their specific concerns. Her first meeting was with the representative of the Pacifist Alliance, a group of species that had moral objections to human military methods. Commander Thompson, said Ambassador Seath of the Gentle Peoples, our species have evolved beyond the need for violence. How can we trust humans to resolve conflicts peacefully when their first instinct is to fight? Thompson had prepared for this question carefully. Ambassador Seath, humans do not choose violence as a first option. We choose it as a last option, when all else has failed. The Zephyrians tried diplomacy with the Vorthens and were ignored. The hegemony tried negotiation with the station occupiers and was rebuffed. Sometimes force is the only language that aggressors understand. Her next meeting was with Councillor Torvin of the Militant Alliance, species who worried that human membership would make them appear weak by comparison. Commander, Torvin said bluntly, humans fight like savages. Your tactics are crude and your methods are extreme. How do we explain to our own warriors that we are allying ourselves with beings who solve problems by ramming ships into each other? Thompson smiled at the directness of the question. Councillor Torvin, human tactics appear crude because we prioritize effectiveness over elegance. When innocent lives are at stake, we care more about saving them quickly than about looking sophisticated while we do it. The formal debate resumed the next day with new arguments from both sides. Several species that had remained neutral began expressing support for human membership, influenced by the testimonies they had heard. The breakthrough came when Ambassador Nexavol of the ancient Concordium took the floor. His species was among the oldest in the galaxy, and their opinions carried enormous weight in council deliberations. Esteemed colleagues, Nexavol began, his ancient voice carrying the authority of millennia. We have debated human nature for 2 days, but we have not asked the most important question. What kind of galaxy do we want to live in? The chamber fell silent as the ancient being continued his address. Do we want a galaxy where aggressive species are allowed to prey on the weak because civilized peoples are too refined to stop them? Or do we want a galaxy where those with the strength to fight will do so in defense of those who cannot defend themselves? Nexavol gestured toward the human observer section. These beings offer us something we have lacked for centuries, the willingness to pay any price necessary to protect the innocent. Yes, they are dangerous, but they are dangerous to our enemies, not to our friends. The vote was scheduled for the following morning, giving delegates time to consult with their home governments. Commander Thompson spent a sleepless night reviewing intelligence reports and preparing for different scenarios. The decision would affect not just humanity's future, but the future of galactic civilization. When the council reconvened, the chamber was packed with observers from dozens of species. News networks throughout the galaxy were broadcasting the proceedings live, making it one of the most watched political events in recent history. Chancellor Kethmore of Concordia called for the formal vote on human membership in the galactic community. Each species would cast their vote electronically, with results displayed on the chamber's main screen. The votes appeared one by one, creating a tense countdown as the tally slowly accumulated. The Zephyrian Confederation voted yes, as expected. The Hegemony and Andalusian Republic also supported human membership, but several major species voted no, including the Crystalline Assembly and the Pacifist Alliance. As the final votes were tallied, Commander Thompson realized that the decision would be extremely close. Human membership required a 2/3 majority, and the count was hovering right at the threshold. The ancient Concordium cast the deciding vote. Yes. The final tally showed 29 votes in favor, 13 opposed, and 1 abstention. humanity, had been accepted into the galactic community by the narrowest possible margin. Chancellor Keth Moore announced the results formally. By the authority vested in this council, humanity is hereby granted full membership in the galactic community with all rights and responsibilities thereof. The chamber erupted in mixed reactions. Some delegates applauded the decision while others sat in stony silence. Commander Thompson felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had just occurred. Elder diplomat Keth Ara approached the humans section with a formal invitation. Commander Thompson, the galactic community welcomes humanity. As our newest member, will you accept the responsibilities of membership on behalf of your species? Thompson stood and addressed the council for the first time as a representative of a member species. On behalf of humanity, I accept membership in the galactic community. We pledge to use our strength in service of peace and to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The ceremony that followed was brief but historic. Commander Thompson signed the Articles of Membership while delegates from supporting species witnessed the occasion. For the first time in galactic history, a species with humanity's aggressive reputation had been granted full membership status. As the council session ended, Thompson realized that the real work was just beginning. Humanity would need to prove that the council's faith in them was justified. They would need to show that deathworlders could become something more than just feared warriors. The message she sent to Captain Sullivan was simple but profound. We're in. Now we have to prove we deserve it. Across the galaxy, the news of human membership sparked celebrations in some systems and protests in others. 5 years after humanity's admission to the galactic community, Admiral Jake Sullivan stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed human embassy station orbiting Concordia. The massive facility served as headquarters for what had become known throughout the galaxy as the Guardian Fleet, a combined force of human and allied vessels dedicated to protecting peaceful civilizations. The view from the observation deck showed dozens of ships from different species working together in ways that would have been impossible just a few years earlier. Zephyrian science vessels shared docking facilities with human destroyers, while hegemony patrol boats coordinated missions with Andalusian exploration ships. Admiral Sullivan, came a familiar voice behind him. He turned to see Ambassador Grace, Thompson approaching, accompanied by a young man in a crisp naval uniform. Grace, Sullivan said warmly, good to see you. How did the negotiations with the Outer Rim colonies go? Thompson smiled, though Sullivan could see the exhaustion in her eyes. Her role as chief human ambassador had expanded far beyond what anyone had originally envisioned. Successful, but complicated. The Rigel system wants protection from raiders, but they're worried about human ships being too aggressive for their trade partners. The young officer with Thompson stepped forward and saluted. Admiral, Lieutenant Peter Chen reporting for duty. I've been assigned to your staff as the new intelligence liaison. Sullivan returned the salute and studied the young man carefully. Chen looked to be in his early 20s, with the alert expression of someone who had graduated at the top of his class. Welcome aboard, Lieutenant. I assume you've been briefed on our current operations? Yes, sir. We're currently monitoring 17 different threat situations across 9 star systems. Priority targets include the Red Claw pirates in the Vega sector and the Dominion separatists near the Galactic Rim. Sullivan nodded approvingly. The new generation of human officers was well-trained and professionally competent, but they lacked the hard-earned experience of veterans like himself. He made a mental note to pair Chen with Major Kelly Adams for some practical field training. The communication system chimed with an incoming priority message. Sullivan activated the holographic display to see Captain Amy Rodriguez calling from the UCS Ironclad, which was currently patrolling the trade routes near Zephyrian space. Jake, Rodriguez said without preamble, we've got a situation developing in the Kepler system. Long-range sensors are picking up a massive fleet movement. It looks like someone's preparing for a major offensive. Sullivan frowned as he studied. The sensor data Rodriguez transmitted. The fleet signature was unfamiliar, but the scale was enormous. Over 300 ships were massing near the edge of the Kepler system, far from any established trade routes or settled worlds. "Any idea who they are or what they want?" Sullivan asked. "Negative. They're maintaining radio silence and their ship designs don't match any known species in our database. But Jake, some of these vessels are huge. We're talking about dreadnoughts that make our battleships look like fighters." Ambassador Thompson stepped closer to the display, her diplomatic instincts alerting her to potential complications. "Admiral, if this is a new species making first contact, we need to be very careful about how we approach them. One wrong move could start a war." Sullivan was already thinking through the tactical implications. If this unknown fleet was hostile, they represented a threat unlike anything the galaxy had faced since the Vorthan expansion. But if they were peaceful explorers, a military response could turn potential allies into enemies. "Amy, pull back to a safe distance and continue monitoring. Don't engage unless they make hostile moves toward civilian targets. I'm calling an emergency council meeting." Within hours, representatives from all major galactic community species had gathered in the embassy station's main conference room. The holographic display showed real-time updates from reconnaissance ships monitoring the unknown fleet. Elder diplomat Cathara represented the Zephyrian Confederation, her pale features showing concern as she studied the tactical data. "These ships are unlike anything in our historical records. The technology appears to be centuries ahead of current galactic standards." Counselor Vextar of the Hegemony was more direct in his assessment. 300 ships of unknown capability represents an existential threat to galactic security. We should mobilize the combined fleet immediately. Ambassador Veltar of the Andalusian Republic disagreed. "Mobilizing our forces could be seen as an act of aggression. We should attempt diplomatic contact before considering military options." Sullivan listened to the debate while reviewing intelligence reports on his personal display. Lieutenant Chen had compiled everything known about the mysterious fleet, but the information was frustratingly limited. "Admiral," Chen said quietly, "there's something else you should see. Our long-range sensors have detected energy signatures consistent with massive construction projects in the fleet's rear areas. It looks like they're building something." The holographic display updated to show the new sensor data. Behind the main fleet, enormous structures were taking shape in space. The construction appeared to be some kind of space station or staging facility, but its purpose was unclear. "They're not just passing through," Sullivan realized. "They're planning to stay." The revelation changed the entire dynamic of the situation. A fleet in transit might be peaceful explorers or even refugees seeking new homes. But a fleet that was building permanent installations represented either an invasion force or colonists claiming territory. Ambassador Thompson activated her communication console to contact the unknown fleet directly. "Unknown vessels, this is Ambassador Grace Thompson of the Human Embassy representing the galactic community. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions in this region." The response came immediately, transmitted on multiple frequencies in perfect galactic standard language. The voice was mechanically precise, without the emotional nuances that characterized most organic species. "This is Collective Node Prime of the Synthesis Union. We have come to bring order to this chaotic region of space. Organic civilizations will be evaluated for integration into our collective. Resistance is inadvisable." The conference room fell silent as the implications of the message sank in. The unknown fleet wasn't interested in trade, diplomacy, or peaceful coexistence. They were here to conquer and assimilate every civilization in the galaxy. Sullivan's expression hardened as he activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All Guardian Fleet vessels, this is Admiral Sullivan. We have a confirmed hostile contact with superior numbers and unknown technology. Prepare for emergency deployment." Elder Diplomat Cathara looked alarmed. "Admiral, surely we should attempt further. negotiations before resorting to military action. Ma'am, with respect, they just announced their intention to forcibly integrate our entire civilization. That's not a negotiation, that's a declaration of war. The Synthesis Union's next transmission eliminated any remaining doubt about their intentions. Resistance detected among local organic populations. Pacification protocols are now in effect. Prepare for systematic evaluation and integration. Across the galaxy, communication networks carried the news of humanity's greatest challenge yet. The species that had once been feared as deathworlders now faced an enemy that considered organic life itself to be an inefficiency to be corrected. Captain. Rodriguez reported in from the Ironclad with urgent tactical updates. Jake, the unknown fleet is dividing into smaller formations. It looks like they're preparing to attack multiple systems simultaneously. Sullivan studied the fleet movements on his tactical display. The Synthesis Union was implementing a classic divide-and-conquer strategy, splitting their forces to overwhelm individual systems before they could coordinate a unified defense. All ships, implement Emergency Protocol 7, Sullivan ordered. We're going to meet them in the deep space between systems. If we let them reach the populated worlds, millions of civilians will die. Ambassador Thompson was already coordinating with the other galactic community species to organize evacuation efforts and defensive preparations. Her years of diplomatic experience had taught her to plan for worst-case scenarios. Admiral, she said as she finished her calls, the Council has voted to give you full military authority to coordinate the defense. Every species is contributing their available forces to the Guardian fleet. Sullivan nodded grimly as he watched ship after ship report ready for deployment. Human vessels formed the core of the force, but they were joined by Zephyrian science ships converted to support roles, hegemony patrol boats, and even a few ancient Concordium dreadnoughts that hadn't seen combat in centuries. Lieutenant Chen approached with a final intelligence briefing. Sir, based on their transmission protocols and ship movements, we estimate the Synthesis Union has technological advantages in shields, weapons, and possibly faster-than-light travel. But they appear to rely heavily on centralized command and control. Sullivan smiled for the first time since the crisis began. Then we'll fight them the human way. Close range, maximum aggression, and target their command structure first. As the Guardian fleet prepared to depart for what would become known as the Battle of the Deep Dark, Sullivan reflected on how far humanity had come.